Welcome to Left, Right, Center, where we are covering Colorado politics. First on CBS 4, I'm political specialist Shaun Boyd with our analysts, Democrat Mike Dino, Republican Dick Wadhams. The White House announced this week that President Biden will be in Colorado on Wednesday. Sources tell me the president is traveling here to announce both Camp Hale and 10 Mile Range are now national monuments. His visit comes less than a week before ballots go out, and Colorado's Senate race could be key in determining who controls the U.S. Senate. The race pits Democratic incumbent Michael Bennet, who was instrumental in the Camp Hale designation, against Republican challenger Joe O'Dea. So, Mike, should we read anything into this visit? Does it help, hurt, make no difference to Bennet?
Well, I think it's a huge positive. 2 years ago, the Democrats were really on Senator Gardner to pass the CORE Act, the Colorado Outdoor Recreation and Economy Act, that has Camp Hale in it. And that didn't happen. And of course, the two senators and Joe Neguse have reintroduced the CORE Act. And they're really huge proponents, and it's a good issue for Colorado voters.
Public lands.
To me, I think it's one of those things as you're, getting close to voting that it attracts unaffiliated voters. It's very narrow enough to where you're not carrying the baggage of the president. Now, his approvals have gone up. They've gone from 36% to 44%, still, below 50. But the bottom line is it's a narrow enough issue that is hugely appealing to why people live in Colorado, the outdoors. And it is consistent with the senator's agenda. So it hits all the right things. And it's a quick stop, and he's out of here.
And I think they are very official for this visit. It's not going to be campaign related as far as I can tell. So, Dick, O'Dea has a possible presidential contender stumping for him here. U.S. Senator Tim Scott is in town this week. And I think, O'Dea kind of frames himself as this Washington outsider, and yet he's bringing an insider in to campaign for him.
Oh, I don't think there's any contradiction there. Senator Tim Scott is one of the most respected members of the U.S. Senate right now. He's got one of the most compelling personal stories you can ever hear about his upbringing in South Carolina. And he is a real breath of fresh air for the Republican Party and for the Senate overall. I think it's great he's having him here. But I got to tell you, I look at this visit by President Biden, and it's very nice that he's coming to do this. I support Camp Hale and all that stuff. But you know what? That's not what is on people's minds right now. And I will tell you, inflation and crime, it's really nice that there'll be a headline and there'll be stories about Biden coming to Colorado right next to the murder of the day, the rape of the day, and the fact that inflation and gasoline and groceries are going up, and gasoline's gone up for 3 weeks straight. And I just don't think this is relevant to most voters. I think they'll think, oh, that's nice, and maybe that's a good thing to do. But Biden ought to come here, and he ought to go up to Craig. He ought to go talk to coal miners who are going to lose their jobs. He ought to go to Weld County and talk to Hispanics who are losing their oil and gas jobs. That's what the president ought to do, with Bennet standing right next to him. That's what ought to happen.
I mean, you can't ignore the timing of this, though, that it's coming right before the election, and yet the polls show that Bennet has this wide margin.
Yeah, I think he has a wide margin. As I said, I think he'll win by single digits. I think what's more interesting is O'Dea has former President George W. Bush coming out. And in contrast to the fact that, a lot of people are thinking, well, where's Trump in this whole thing? And we saw that one of the former folks who was running for the Republican nomination has endorsed a libertarian in the race.
We're going to talk about that next.
Yes, and we're going to talk about that next. And it's worth talking about because it's going to be one of the challenges for the Republicans. Can they motivate that far right wing?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Colorado Politics reports the candidate who lost the Republican primary to O'Dea is now backing the Libertarian in the Senate race, Brian Potter. Hanks told the media outlet Potter is the only conservative on the ballot. So, Mike, these third-party candidates rarely have much of an impact on a race unless it is close. But, Colorado does have its share of libertarians.
They do. I mean, it's always a chance to pull 2 or 3% away from particularly the Republican side.
Yeah.
And I don't think...
And if it's close, that matters.
I mean, and I think Hanks is given an opening here. We have despised the third parties coming in and supporting alternative candidates. We saw that in the primaries. I'm wondering, Dick, are we going to see some shenanigans again? Maybe from my party or somebody else that's going to really promote the Libertarian candidate?
Well, the Libertarian candidate will get 3%. I don't care who endorses him or what that person does. It just happens. But I think this is a net positive for O'Day, Shaun. And I'll tell you why. Because the Republicans who cannot vote for O'Day because he's pro-choice, because he's not an election conspiracist, they were going to vote against O'Day anyway. Either they weren't going to vote or they're going to vote for the Libertarian. I think this is one more reminder for independents, unaffiliated swing voters, that Joe O'Day is not an election conspiracist. He is not in the pocket of Donald Trump, that he is his own special kind of independent Republican. And so I think it's fine. Ron Hanks is a joke, and everybody knows he's a joke. And the vast majority of Republicans who voted for him in the primary want to defeat Michael Bennet. They're going to stick with O'Day.
Boy, he's really counting on those unaffiliateds then. If he's losing some of his own party.
Well, and I don't think
it's an interesting strategy.
I don't think he capitalized after the primary. O'Day did not capitalize on locking down the unaffiliateds like he should have, because he had a good number that voted for him. But fundraising was lean. The third-party money didn't come in quick enough, and I think he lost his chance to get those unaffiliated.
Mike, I'm not sure I agree with you there, because I thought O'Day went up with that ad with his wife, which I think is one of the best ads I've seen in Colorado in a long time, and I think that was talking directly to those unaffiliated.
Yeah, but it was a month late after the primary, though.
but I don't think it was too late. I mean, it wasn't. But anyway, I see what you're saying, though.
Yeah,
I see what you're saying. But so anyway.
Well, we'll revisit this in November.
Yeah, exactly. We'll see who's right.
Coming up, could firebrand Republican Representative Lauren Boebert be in trouble? We'll talk about a new poll when we come back. Welcome back to Left, Right, Center. Republican gubernatorial candidate Heidi Ganahls is out with her first TV ad. It comes just a week before ballots go out, and despite trailing Democratic incumbent Jared Polis in the polls, Ganahls' ad is positive for the most part.
Jared Polis likes to think he has done a good job, but here around the Colorado kitchen table, families are struggling to make the most basic ends meet. We can do better. The past few years have been really hard, and it's time to begin charting a new path forward for everyone. I'm a mom, a business owner, a leader. This November, let's choose to build a Colorado we can all be proud of. I'm Heidi Ganahls, running for governor of Colorado, and I approve this message.
All right, Dick, is it effective? And maybe more importantly, is it too late?
Well, I think it's a good ad. But it's an ad that probably should have been running about 2 months ago, introducing her to the electorate. And Heidi's been playing catch-up financially ever since she won the primary, and that's just the brutal truth. Meanwhile, Governor Polis throws in $9 million without blinking an eye, like me throwing a $5 bill on that table. I mean, and so that's the situation. She's got to sharpen the contrast with Polis, like she did in that debate.
Right.
Because the issues really are on her side. I mean, crime, inflation, homelessness. I just really think that she's got to really sharpen it quickly in order to get in the game.
Yeah, Mike Polis put in a less than stellar performance at that debate. We've got our debate. Will take place right here in the CBS 4 studio this next week. So what's he need to do?
Well, he has to have a more stellar performance. No, I think he's got to lead with probably a little more confidence and definitely show that his record, which is worth standing up for, is laid out as clearly as possible. I think, you asked Dick about, is it a little too late? And I think it is a little too late for Heidi Ganahls. I mean, I think that, picking an election denier for her lieutenant governor, putting out a tax plan that's, just not feasible.
A lot of questions about
and then
it,
the
for
furry
sure.
stuff of late. I mean, it just has sidetracked her campaign. I mean, she seems to find something to sidetrack her campaign every week. And this ad isn't going to do that. So, back to, Jared, I think, just needs to focus on staying steady, looking gubernatorial as the governor.
Wear a suit
he
this
is
time?
he is the governor, yes. I mean, this gives him a chance to look like the governor. And, I think the campaign recognizes that. And certainly he will. And I think that's what we'll see in the next debate here.
What do you think, Dick? What do you expect out of this debate?
I agree with Mike. He will look gubernatorial this time.
He might have his tennis shoes on because he'll be behind a podium, but
Yeah,
Well, that's his trademark, though.
Yeah, right.
So,
That's
but,
true.
I mean, he's not going to look like an aging student who decided to go back to school when he was 50 years old. And he also will not be flippant in terms of being there. I mean, his whole attitude in Pueblo was, why do I have to do this? I mean, she's not in my league. And I don't think he's going to have that attitude with you. And in fact, he better not, because you're going to hold him accountable. I know you will.
That's right.
And well, you will hold both of them accountable. So it makes you so good. But no, I think he will be much different this time. He's not going to walk in there and just kind of wing it. So
I think you're right.
but Heidi needs to replicate what she did.
And that's not easy
See, and
to
this
do.
one is live
Right.
for an
Yeah.
hour.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
a whole different dynamic,
Yeah.
too. You don't have an audience there.
Are they going to
so-
arm wrestle or anything?
Yeah, we're going to flip a coin, so. So the CBS 4 Colorado Sun governor's race debate will take place, as I said, right here in the CBS 4 studio next week, Thursday, 6 to 7 p.m., and we hope that you will join us. We continue to cover Colorado politics first with a look at a new poll that's creating quite a stir in Colorado's 3rd congressional district. It shows Democrat Adam Frisch is now within 2 points of Republican incumbent Lauren Boebert, despite the district leaning heavily Republican. Boebert and Frisch went head-to-head last month in the Club 20 debate, the only debate Boebert would agree to do.
On talking about congressional legislative success, you're 0 for 39, so I'm not sure how you define success.
And I have proven that I have got the work done. I can get the work done. And I've secured over $340 million in appropriations for our districts, for our farmers and our ranchers. And Nancy Pelosi is running a con game. Under Pelosi, Democrats are told to campaign as moderates. Make no mistake, there are no moderates in Nancy Pelosi's party. If Democrats were moderate, they'd make the IRS more efficient. They would simplify the tax code, making it harder to cheat. Instead, Democrats are hiring 87,000 IRS agents to come after you. That's extreme, but Adam applauded D.C. Democrats for doing it.
I kept expecting Pelosi to pop up at this debate. She referenced her so often. Boebert was on the defense quite a bit in this debate. Do you put much stock in this poll?
I respect the pollster, Chris Keating. I think he's an excellent pollster, but I frankly don't believe these numbers. But sometimes pollsters do have a bad night, Sean. I've personally experienced it, and it happens. I just think that her base of support is so deep and so loyal to her that there's no way he can beat her ultimately. She's not going to win by 10 points, like Mike said. But the other thing is about Adam Frisch is a nice guy. I got to know him recently. But you know what? He's still from a ski county. And the
Aspen, yeah.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, what the Democrats need to do, I'm not giving them free advice or anything, but they need to find a John Salazar or a Ben Campbell, 2 Democrats that did represent the 3rd, who were very much moderate, even conservative Democrats, who really were from the agricultural base of the district. Adam Frisch from Aspen isn't going to work. So.
What do you think, Mike? I mean, it is a different district now, too. Can a Democrat win in the 3rd congressional district?
Well, I agree with Dick in the sense that you have to probably find a different candidate that fits the district better. But Adam Frisch has really run a very good campaign considering the situation. It is a district that is even better for Republicans after it was redrawn. Republicans should win by 9%. Boebert probably won't win by that much, but she doesn't, she wins by 1 or 2, it's still a win. And I think a recent news article typified the situation in the 3rd. One person who was interviewed said, a half-assed Republican is better than a Democrat any day. And that, as I tell my son, who's worried about that race, that typifies the 3rd congressional district.
Yeah. Up next, Colorado could be the second state in the country to decriminalize magic mushrooms. We talked to people who say now isn't the right time. Welcome back to Left, Right, Center, where we cover Colorado politics first. Denver Mayor Michael Hancock told CBS 4 this week he is opposed to a ballot measure that would decriminalize psychedelic mushrooms statewide. Denver was the first city in the country to decriminalize mushrooms almost 3 years ago. While Hancock says the impact has been minimal so far, he says there's little information about the health and safety impacts, and he says the state already has a drug misuse problem. Opponents worry voters will underestimate the potency of mushrooms just as they did marijuana. Supporters say psilocybin, the chemical compound in mushrooms, could help countless Coloradans with mental health issues.
It was my lifelong dream to serve my country and attend West Point.
Kevin Matthews' dream of joining the military was shattered when he was diagnosed with major depression. For 2 years, he says he struggled with suicidal ideations until a friend introduced him to psychedelic mushrooms.
It was a revelation.
Life-changing.
Life-changing.
The FDA has labeled mushrooms a breakthrough therapy, fast-tracking research, but not fast enough for Matthews, who is pushing Proposition 122 to create state-licensed and regulated facilities where psychedelic mushrooms can be used by those 21 and older under the supervision of so-called facilitators, who would also be licensed and regulated by the state.
We know that combining these medicines with therapy can have the most impact for people's lives.
Those who want to grow, use, or share mushrooms at home could also do so. The measure decriminalizes personal use of an amount necessary for sharing. What that amount is isn't defined.
So this vague definition is going to have to be determined and interpreted and likely worked through the court system.
Matthew Duffy supports mushrooms but opposes the measure that's been largely bankrolled by out-of-state interests. He worries corporations will control the mushroom market, making it cost-prohibitive. Others worry mushrooms will be too accessible, especially for kids. The measure makes underage possession a petty offense.
My biggest concern would be that once we legalize things, it makes kids and young adults think it's safe.
Dawn Reinfeld is executive director of the nonprofit Blue Rising Together, which has taken on the marijuana industry over the impact of high-potency pot. She says mushrooms may be worse.
If there is medicinal purposes, let's let science determine that. Let's do trials, let's do research.
Matthews says some people can't wait.
There are people who are suffering today who don't necessarily have access to these medicines, who deserve access to them, who deserve that choice.
So, Mike, Proposition 122 doesn't allow mushrooms to be sold. We don't retail sales, but it does allow them to be gifted for a donation. You think Coloradans are on board with this?
Yeah, my hunch is they are. I don't like it in the sense that it puts mandates on local governments. Local governments cannot opt out like they could with marijuana.
Wow.
And I'm a local government guy. You know, that was where I cut my teeth getting into the policy world, and I think that's unfair to local governments. But, you know, we just had a recent study that showed that people 65 and under should be seeking, you know, a mental health check and for anxiety as part of the regular health checkup. And I think people are worried about that, and they're tired of the regular opioid drugs and certainly the fentanyl scare. And that's where marijuana and mushrooms have gotten traction. Microdosing is something that people talk about a lot in circles around Colorado. So I think it has some potential.
It is true. People do like local control here. The Municipal League, I know, is against this measure for that very reason. Dick, though, I keep going back to this, you know, when we legalized marijuana, everybody's thinking, oh, it's that joint, you know, from the 1960s, and that's not what it is today. And so I think there is some concern around, you know, is what exactly are we legalizing here with mushrooms, too?
I applaud Mayor Hancock, honestly. I think that's very courageous of him to come out so opposed to this, because it's dead right. And I think the observation that that there is a legitimate place for people who could benefit from mushrooms, well, fine, and let's find an avenue for them to get that without legalizing it. And Shaun, your reference to legalizing marijuana, I think that has been a net negative for our state. I really do. And I think it's contributed to the crime and the homelessness.
All right. Thanks for watching Left, Right, Center. We will see you next week at the same time.